Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating piece of source material that's been generating a ton of buzz lately. We are taking a deep dive into a biblical prophecy that some scholars claim points directly to the year 2026. Whether you're super familiar with theology or just, curious about how ancient texts are being mapped onto our modern global events, this explainer is going to break it all down for you step by step.
So right off the bat, is the year 2026 a turning point in biblical prophecy? Well, the source material we're analyzing today makes the case that it very well might be. But more importantly, it makes this profound argument that divine warnings aren't actually there to make us panic. They're meant to prepare us. The source draws this really cool historical parallel to the ancient story of Noah's Ark. Think about it. When the warning came in that story, it wasn't a threat, right? It was this urgent, loving invitation to build a boat before the rain started. So how exactly does that ancient blueprint relate to us today?
Okay, let's dive into this by looking at past prophecies and Jesus and checking out the historical track record.
The source takes us straight into the book of Daniel. It details how specific, massive empires like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome were accurately foretold way before they ever rose to power. But the real anchor here, the absolute focal point of this historical track record, is Jesus. The source unpacks Daniel's famous 70 weeks prophecy, neutrally explaining how this ancient text is claimed to have precisely predicted the timeline of Jesus as the Messiah, literally mapping it out from his birth to his crucifixion and eventually to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. According to the source, this incredibly precise track record regarding Jesus and these historical events is exactly what gives weight to the text's claims about our future.
And that brings us to an absolutely crucial concept, the definition of a divine warning. The source's foundational argument is that a prophetic message given by God is not designed to scare you. Actually, scratch the idea of fear completely. Its entire purpose is to offer humanity a chance for preparation and salvation. Throughout history, the source argues these messages have always been about giving people a clear window of time to get their house in order before a major shift hits. All right, moving on to the signs of the end times, where we look at ancient texts colliding with modern realities.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact connection the source is making. On one side, we have ancient biblical prophecies, warnings of wars, pestilence, and the strict economic system tied to a mark of the beast. Then we map that directly onto our modern reality. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, global pandemics like COVID-19, and the crazy, unprecedented rise of artificial intelligence and digital currency. The source objectively compares these ancient descriptions to our very specific modern crises, suggesting they line up in a remarkably accurate way.
But, it's not just about global politics or tech. Jesus himself specifically warned that love will grow cold. The source notes this incredibly fascinating observation. Alongside the physical disasters like earthquakes and global warming, Jesus warned of a profound societal and psychological shift. He predicted a time where selfishness would basically take over and genuine empathy would just fade away. It's a really striking prediction that the source argues is actively playing out right now in our increasingly isolated and divided world.
So, what about the 2026 prediction itself? Let's unpack the mathematics of prophecy.
2026, the source arrives at this very specific year by walking through some incredibly intricate biblical mathematics. It explains how certain scholars take the prophet Daniel's ancient measurements of 2,300 days and 70 weeks, combine them with the 1,000-year periods mentioned in the book of Revelation, and point to this exact year. The calculations presented in this source suggest that 2026 is mathematically primed to be a massive historical and spiritual turning point. But what exactly is the source claiming 2026 might bring? Well, based on these interpretations, we're looking at three potential global shifts. Number one, a major economic crisis that really shakes the global foundation. Number two, a massive global political shift. And number three, the full realization of a digital control system. In these theological circles, that's often linked to the concept of the mark of the beast, a scenario where everyday human buying and selling becomes strictly controlled by technology. Now, I gotta throw in a major caveat here. From the source, the Bible gives signs, not exact dates. The source is super careful to clarify that these ancient texts are meant to be markers of the times, rather than, exact calendar appointments. The focus shouldn't just be obsessing over the number 2026 itself, but rather paying attention to the urgency of our current global situation and what it signals to believers. Which leads us perfectly into Jesus' message of hope, the ultimate antidote to fear. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this direct quote from Jesus regarding these exact tumultuous times. He says, "When these things begin to take place, do not panic, lift up your heads because your redemption draws near."
The source highlights this specific teaching to make it crystal clear that Jesus intended these signs to wake believers up and offer them immense hope. The goal is absolutely not to terrify people with some apocalyptic doom, but to signal that a promised redemption is finally on the horizon.
The source then brings back that narrative motif of Noah's Ark to really drive this point home. In Noah's time, people literally laughed at the warning and ultimately faced a devastating flood. Today, the source argues, humanity is facing a distinctly similar choice. We can either ignore the modern signs and prophecies, or we can heed the warning and find absolute safety in faith. It's presented as this repetitive cycle of human history, and we are standing right at the critical decision point.
Okay, so how do we prepare today? Let's look at some actionable steps for believers.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the source outlines 5 really clear, practical steps to navigate this era. Step 1. Read the Bible, specifically focusing on the prophetic books of Daniel and Revelation so you can understand the times. Step 2. Pray for peace to break free from all that worldly anxiety. Step 3. Beware of false prophets and deceptive miracles. The text explicitly warns these will pop up to mislead people. Step 4. Prepare your family spiritually, just like Noah did to protect his own household. And Step 5. Live a holy life. The source emphasizes that taking these specific steps ensures you are totally grounded, no matter what crazy things happen on the world stage.
To synthesize everything we've covered today, the source's ultimate takeaway is beautifully captured in a single principle. True preparation is standing firm in God. Surviving 2026, or honestly any upcoming global crisis, doesn't rely on hoarding physical supplies or giving in to societal panic. According to the source, it relies entirely on your spiritual readiness, deepening your faith and living your life without moral compromise.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought from the source material. Will you ignore the warning, or will you prepare? We've unpacked the historical track record, the intricate math of the prophecies, the undeniable modern signs, and most importantly, the central message of hope brought by Jesus. Now it's over to you. How do you interpret these signs based on everything we've looked at today? Do you feel like we're on the verge of a major spiritual turning point? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Keep seeking the truth behind the text, and we'll see you in the next explainer.